everyone helps people in every career. My older brother said something to me. It stuck with me. He said, a PE teacher has probably prevented more cases of diabetes than a doctor. And that stuck with me.
It's very interesting to dig into that mind and that mentality as well, because to be honest, it's something that many people do face, can contribute to an element of loneliness as well. And
there's a role for every single person. Sometimes your personality traits might go better with being a doctor rather than being a nurse or a healthcare assistant or like a pharmacist. So it's just about finding what works for you and your roles and matching that up with your preferred career path.
Because I don't think there's anything wrong with a woman looking out for her financial security and stability and that of her offspring. What's wrong with that?
hello and welcome to the StriveMed podcast, brand new episode. Just before we get into this next episode, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Follow us on Instagram, StriveMed, and TikTok, StriveMed as well. Putting in a lot of effort to bring the best episodes. Myself, Dr. Anam.
Dr. Zach.
And we've got an exceptional guest today, brilliant, individual. His name is Rayyan Barakat.
Yeah, perfect.
On the screen here. And he's currently in 4th year of medicine at Barton, the London School of Medicine and Dentistry. And we go way back.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm so excited to speak to you today, Rayyan. And just to let the audience know about how exactly we met, it's been more of like in the beginning, we were helping you out and things like that with regards to more of a mentorship relationship, obviously, from the point of view of StriveMed, obviously, as one of our students, you're receiving aid and mentorship in that area. And following on from that, just seeing your progression and development through each and every stage, it's just reached a situation where it's just basically we're very, very good friends now, and we're moving on from that. And, it's just an absolute honor to speak to you and, just as one of our very close friends, to be honest. And I think there's a lot to learn from what we went through previously together, and take wisdoms forward from our time in med school. Obviously now we're working as doctors, you're still a student, but obviously we have a long history together. So there's a lot to unpack, to be honest. I don't know if you want to share any thoughts, reflections on, how we met, any of the
so I'd say Rayyan has been a pinnacle in terms of mentorship and StriveMed and stuff before it even came about, before we even actually officially started it. Rayyan was, he sought out for aid and assistance when he was a new fresher and he started university, and we happened to be there for him. And I remember just one incident. I remember I was revising, I think I was 3rd year, 4th year, I can't remember exactly, but I was revising in the library, and Rayyan came to me and we were just chatting and we were speaking about how he's found his initially started medical school. And I remember you wanted advice on how to revise, and this is something that I actually went through. Exact same thing is that sometimes medical school is very different to A-levels, so sometimes you don't know, you need someone to guide you and assist you and give you some mentorship with regards to revision planning. So I remember we sat down and we were there for almost hours, just going through, and I was telling you to make a Google calendar and do all sorts of stuff. And it paid off, man. And that's something I needed. I remember a brother in one of the old years, he actually helped me with the exact same thing. So it was it's nice, innit, that thing gets passed down. And then, since then, man, it's just been, Rayyan's just been part of the family, man. StriveMed family, he's always been there. Mentoring also students of his own at some point as well, for sure, taking them under his wing. So
for sure.
So he's always been there, man.
Nah, Rayyan, man, you mean a lot to me. I'll say that raw, man. You're a special individual in my life. And I really appreciate you a lot, man. So, yeah, man. Any kind of reflections from your point of view on how we met or the journey we've had together?
Definitely. So one thing I'd say is that from the very beginning, I tell every younger now, and not just younger, people who are I'm in the mentorship role of, I'm not doing this necessarily out of the goodness of my heart. I tell them I owe it to you, because brothers like yourselves, I wouldn't be where I am, if it wasn't for the people in my life, like brothers like yourself, obviously my family, and so many mentors along the way. Yeah. So it's just the idea, as you mentioned, where it's like a chain, and each person has to pay it forward. And I remember both of you have been pivotal at different points on my journey. So, thank you so much for that. And this, amazing. Obviously, there's still long ways to go. But I'm very blessed to have you brothers like yourselves on my journey. And it's just, the value of mentorship is it's worth more than gold. That's what I'd say about.
Agreed. One actually a teacher that we all know, our mentor, he mentioned a specific point, and he says that actually mentorship is, and we've already spoken about this on a podcast, but the importance of mentorship is that it adds on lifetimes to your lifetime. It's like a cheat code, man. Like, because this person's already been through it. He knows. He'll tell you what to stay away from. He'll tell you what path to go down. He'll get you to where you want to be quicker than you would have done it yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So I feel like that's what I've benefited, and that's what we've tried to pass down to Rayyan, and that's what he's now trying to pass down to the other students on our StriveMed program. So it's just important. And anyone else who wants to let this be a sign, yeah. Anyone else who wants to embark on that journey, like, you're not alone, man. I feel like it's always easier and better to have a mentor to guide you and tell you what to stay away from and guide you through the obstacles and the journey through medical school.
I mean, it's all about the adaptability, and obviously you have to find the right mentor and things like that. But at the end of the day, from the mentor's perspective, it's about the adaptability, dealing with different types of individuals, their backgrounds, and tailoring the process specifically for them. So, we've done this for many, many years now. We have so many students in StriveMed with regards like all different backgrounds. We've had guys, we've had girls, all different socioeconomic backgrounds.
Exactly.
All different people, and we tailor them with the appropriate help which they need. So that's just mad, honestly. Rayyan, where did it all start?
So I think my story is quite interesting. So I'm from Southeast London.
Okay.
I grew up there. I don't have any sort of medics in the family. And I remember specifically throughout secondary school, I had no interest in medicine. In fact, when we were picking our GCSEs, I remember one of the teachers said, it doesn't really matter what GCSEs you pick, except if you want to do specific things like medicine. And I laughed in my head. I thought, look at these people that they have to decide like such a big decision at this time. That could never be me. This was in year 9.
Yeah.
So I really did not have my mind on medicine at all. My parents, obviously, they didn't really actually push me to, like, they kind of would have been happy with it, but they weren't very strict on me doing it.
Yeah.
And at that time, I wanted to be like a media editor. I wanted to be a YouTuber, like a lot of young kids.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm more tailored towards my interests or my passions are more towards the humanities side of things. So 100%. I was quite skilled in English literature, history, politics. That was more my, philosophy at the time.
Okay.
That was more my strengths. So I didn't see myself as a sciencey kind of person. But what happened is my confidence in the sciences started to increase. And that was in part to, many things. I had teachers along the way. Obviously, we discussed the value of mentorship.
Yeah.
That kind of increased my confidence. And then when I increased my confidence in science, again, I just thought, maybe like I should take this as one of my GCSE options, triple science.
Yeah.
And I remember my older brother, one of his friends was a pharmacist. And I thought it just hit something. The idea that someone like me or someone that came from a background like myself could do something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, he's a pharmacist. I can be a pharmacist. I can earn a decent living and whatever. And the reason I was interested in pharmacy over medicine was because I thought it's an easier life because you get all these scare stories about medicine. So I was initially going to go towards pharmacy and I had conversations with one of my teachers. He had been a pharmacist before and he came to teaching and his wife was a doctor.
Okay.
And I told him, what do you think? I want to do pharmacy or medicine. What's better? And he said medicine. And he just laid out the reasons. And I said to my dad, we were in the car one time. I said, I want to do pharmacy. Like medicine is too hard. I don't think I've got the capabilities. And he said something that just stuck with me. Very, very simple words. He said, Rayyan,
that's what fathers do. That's what fathers
exactly.
do. Yeah.
He said, Rayyan, they'll teach you everything you need to know. And for some reason, it just clicked in my head at that time where I was like, I'm so worried, but because in your head you're comparing yourself to a doctor.
Yeah.
But if you get into the program, it means that you're capable of learning what you need to learn.
Yeah.
So that was where my mind kind of shifted.
Okay.
And I embarked on the journey of medicine sort of towards the end of year 10. And that's where it all began, where I was actually striving towards it.
That's so important, man. Like, you need that voice of reason, in times where your judgment is clouded and you're worrying and because you always need that external party to help. And that just goes back again, obviously we've reiterated many times with the importance of mentorship. I remember in one of our first episodes, Dr. Kareem and Zaid, he spoke about something similar where he needed some of his family members, I can't remember if it was his sister or his mother or somebody, was there to help him and like enforce, even when he thought he couldn't do it, or his teacher dared to enforce him and tell him like, listen, no man, you can do it, like, you know, and just simplify things for you, because at that time, like, your judgment's clouded, you're scared, you're anxious, you're worried, so you need someone to sort of show you the ropes and just guide you and calm you down. So I mean, I feel like obviously your dad propelled your journey and he aided you, like, and in what's to come. Like, he's the one that sort of drove you to actually go for it and apply, and look, it worked out for you. So talk us through. So obviously you had this, so this is like what, 17, not 17, how old were you at that
about
time? Yeah.
like 15, 16.
16 year old, yeah. So this is secondary school time.
Yeah.
So that's, I'll be honest, that's still quite early, slightly early on to decide on obviously if you want to do medicine or not. Some people obviously find out later down the line during the A-levels. So now talk us through your process of how did you find A-level examinations? How was your sort of experience doing A-levels and then obviously going on to applying?
Yeah. So my secondary school was quite it was a comprehensive school, and it was quite how do you say this, like in a deprived area kind of thing.
Okay.
So I got my GCSE results and they were really good. Like, they were some of the best in the whole school, and obviously I was elated. And I was very confident at the time. I was like, I'm gonna go to Cambridge and whatever. And then I got into a sixth form, which was like a grammar school, which was one of the best in the country.
Amazing.
So it was a massive contrast, and I actually did the international baccalaureate.
Wow.
So I don't know if you brothers know a lot about that.
Yeah.
So just for the viewers, I guess, it's sort of like an equivalent to A-level, in terms of you do 6 subjects. 3 of them are sort of, you could say A-level level, and then 3 of them are more basic, more towards sort of, I guess, between GCSE and AS difficulty. So I did that, and I'll be honest with you, that was the hardest academic experience of my entire life. When I came to medical school, compared to that, I was chilling.
Oh, okay, wow.
But different people say different things. So some people who were with me, they came to medicine and said, and they did really well in the international baccalaureate, they said medicine is so much more difficult. And I said, no way. Like, so yeah, I did the international baccalaureate. It was extremely difficult for me personally. And it wasn't just the subjects or the academic side itself, it was also adapting. I grew up where you go to a school, 5 years, you work your way up the social ladder, you know how everything works, you've got your social circles, you've got your identity, and you come to a totally new environment with totally different people, and it was just a total culture shock for me. I made it very hard to it was very hard for me to sort of bond and make friends, but it taught me so much about society, about the world, and I'm very grateful for the experience. So I got through that. And then, I came to this. I don't know if you want specifics about like the actual medical application process.
Yeah, so like, because obviously everyone who comes on and we interview, like whether they be med students or now doctors, everyone had a unique experience in A-level. So we spoke to one of our guests earlier, was talking about how he was dealing with an illness that he was diagnosed with just before he started A-level exams, and then management and treatment for that, and him going through chemo, and how he managed to do his A-levels through that. So everyone comes to another another guest that we had first episode, Zaid. He spoke about like actually sort of not doing well on some of his A-level grades. So everyone has various experience. So is there anything like, or would you say your one was pretty standard, or if you want, you can just go in depth and discuss how you found it in general? What A-levels subjects did you do? What grades did you get? It's however in depth you want to go into.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll share some takeaway reflections. Which is sort of, I think when you're applying for medicine, at the time it feels like you're applying, you're doing a lottery. It feels like that. But when you look back in hindsight, you actually do realize it's honestly a tick box exercise. It's about jumping through hoops. It's a science. It's very predictable if you know what you're looking for. Some challenges that I had was just that fact that obviously I'm the first person striving to be a medic in my family. Getting work experience was...
You're striving to be a medic. StriveMed and that.
In terms of my, trying to get work experience, that was extremely difficult. And what I'd recommend to people is or young people in that position, is to think outside the box. So for me, it was impossible, like virtually impossible, to get clinical experience before I submitted my personal statement. Obviously start early, but also think about, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to volunteer in a hospital. What I did is I was part of a community organizing organization. They're called Citizens UK. And they were working with a GP. And something clicked in my head and I realized, hang on, I'm panicking so much, but I can actually kind of twist this experience to tailor it to
tailor it to your
medical
application.
Exactly. And that's something I tell all students at that stage. I tell them, listen, it's not about the quantity. It's about the reflections. So I tell them, when you go, if you do 1 day of work experience, but you have a lot of deep reflections, you can outcompete someone who's had 2 weeks. Who's had very shallow reflections. So just make sure you write what you've done and what you've reflected, because what they want to see when you're applying for medicine is they want to see, do you understand what it takes to be a medic? So that's sort of the...
So there needs to be some substance in what you've done. A lot, you know what, this is an extremely very good point. People are more worried about sort of having plastering their CVs and their personal statements with like, oh, I've sort of done a 2-week sort of work experience in neurosurgery in Guy's and St. Thomas's. And they feel like that's what they need, and that's what they try to strive to get, compared to someone who's maybe done like a week in a pharmacy, in his local pharmacy. What matters isn't where you've done it. What matters is the quality and the substance of what you can reflect on from your experiences and what you can draw upon. As you said, 2 weeks in, for example, someone who's done neurosurgery experience, fair enough, that's prestigious and that's not something everyone gets. However, if their reflections are shallow compared to someone who's done a week, then obviously we all know at the end of the day what the medical school looks for and what stands out. So that's an extremely good point that you mentioned. And also another takeaway point is from Rayyan's story is using what you have in drawing on the experiences around you. A lot of the time you'll forget, like you mentioned, like you were working with Citizens UK, it was in the back of your mind, like, wow, they actually work with a local GP practice. You can use that to your advantage, yeah? But some people forget that. And I feel like, I don't know, what clicked for you? When did you sort of remember that? Was that self-discovery, or would you say you had like did you have to speak to someone who helped you draw that out? Like, what was your experience?
I think it was just on the journey. I can't remember anything specific. But it was just sort of seeing the other experiences people had gone through. And again, just understanding when I got closer to the application, when you submit your personal statement, and I realized, hang on, why did they actually want me to do the experience? And you have to really break it down and ask yourself, okay, what do they want? So they want you to understand, like, what this job entails, to have seen doctors, to have seen patients. So I said, can I draw from my experiences that I've already done? And I was like, well, Citizens UK, I'm working with patients, I'm working with doctors, even though it's in a different context. I'm not sitting in clinics, but I'm still achieving that. So I can still reflect on that in such a way that it achieves the same objectives.
Agreed.
It's always better to be real as well. I mean, not everyone has that aha moment where it's like, oh, I'm walking on the street and that's when I decided something occurred, something crazy occurred, I decided to do medicine. But the key is getting your genuine nature across and putting that across, as in it's not the fact that you're trying to be a doctor already in the application. It's to decide, is this person capable of becoming a doctor? Is he someone who's coachable enough and humble enough to understand that, for example, he understands the journey is not an easy one. That's one of the things. And then obviously besides that, it's just reflecting on your situations using this, STAR approach, which we often use in the StriveMed in the tutoring. It's a very valuable method in actually reflecting and portraying that genuine desire across, which it's very, very easy to actually detect whether someone's seriously about that or if he's not really genuinely interested in pursuing this path.
And I'll mention like a takeaway that I had like during sixth form. So, and this is what I'm saying, you can draw from a very diverse range of your own experiences, and it's about how you reflect. A man who works at Apple came and spoke at our sixth form, and he spoke about how his job, he said, he's not really the most technical. He said there's a lot of bright people, they're quite introverted, they're the ones who do the coding and all of the engineering sort of stuff. And he's also not the best marketer. There's people out there and they're doing all the marketing and speaking and all of that. He said he understood the technical side of Apple's operations and he understood the marketing side. And he said his job is to connect those two worlds. So basically he goes between, the team that delivers to the customers and goes to the technical team and says, this is what they want, and vice versa. He takes the technical information and explains it in a digestible way for the people who are dealing with the customer facing side of things. And that clicked for me when I realized this is a beautiful analogy for me as a medic, because sometimes you might compare yourself to the person who's the best scientist in the class and think, I'm not like them, I'm not as good at science as them. You don't have to be the best scientist. If someone's really good at science, maybe they're better as a researcher, for example. If someone's really good at the caring side, maybe they're better sort of in another role. there's a lot of different roles where you can explore that. I'd say medicine is about being a doctor is about being a hybrid, which is you need to be good enough at being good with people, the communication side of things, and good enough with the technical, the scientific side. And it's the hybrid that makes you a good doctor.
Yeah, bringing those two together.
Exactly. That was the realization I had. And, just a final thing on that is this idea that we also often say, I'm a doctor to help people. There's nothing wrong with saying that. That's true. But if you want to do medicine, make sure that everyone helps people in every career. My older brother said something to me. It stuck with me. He said, a PE teacher has probably prevented more cases of diabetes than a doctor. And that stuck with me. So it's like, make sure that if you want to do medicine, the reason you're doing it is because you genuinely enjoy helping people in that way. Because you can help people with whatever you do.
It's varied. Like it's the specifics. Like as you mentioned, like this is a question that they commonly ask. Yeah, when an interview, I'm sure you guys heard it before. Like the interviewer in medical school, they say, why did you want to do medicine? Yeah. And then the cliche answer, sometimes people say, oh, I want to help people, or I'm interested in science and I want to help people and stuff like that. And then they always say, why do you do nursing then?
Yeah.
Why didn't you do pharmacy? Yeah. Why didn't you become a HCA? Why didn't you do a physiotherapist? So it's like, as you just mentioned, like there's a uniqueness, like with being a doctor, it's unique. All those roles and are essential in hospital, like without a doubt. In healthcare, they're essential, but there's a role for every single person. Sometimes your personality traits might go better with being a doctor rather than being a nurse or a healthcare assistant or like a pharmacist. So it's just about finding what works for you and your roles and matching that up with your preferred career path.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So first of all, let's delve into, we've already spoken about mentorship, but let's delve into starting medical school now. How did you find, you said that you found your international baccalaureate a lot harder than medical school itself. How was it like initially, like being a new medical student? How did you get to grips with, was it difficult for you to get to grips with the environment, the learning environment, especially BARTS? They have a very unique way of teaching, but everyone loves it. So PBLs and spiral learning, which is like the main thing, and everyone uses it in the interviews when they're discussing. So how was it for you? Like, did you adapt straight away? Did it take some time? I know you came up to me and we were there, so I know a bit about it, but for the viewers, benefit for the viewers, how was it for you?
Even though I said what I said earlier about it being easier than the international baccalaureate, for a long time I really felt like an imposter. I felt like I had imposter syndrome. Part of that was to do with the fact that I actually missed the entry requirements by 1 mark to get into medicine, and I was kind of on the edge. And I was very fortunate. I'm very grateful that I got in.
That's amazing.
That experience completely changed my mindset coming into medicine, but it also made me feel like an imposter. Where I looked at everyone else and thought I had this dirty secret that I didn't deserve to be here. So I came in, and obviously they say first year is about working out how to study. And this is the thing, people become fixated on specific methods. A lot of people, they watch different YouTube videos and they're trying to find the theoretical perfect method. And to be honest, it's like, if you go to the gym and you ask the people, the strongest people, how they work out, they're all going to say different things.
They are.
And the same with the people who are at the top of the medical school. They're all going to say different things, but you'll find that every method has certain principles in common. So I'd say it's important not to become hyperfixated on a specific method or specific learning way of learning, but rather to think about the principles. And as time goes on, you're naturally going to, trial and error, work things out. It took time to get to grips with stuff. And I remember I would call my friend before every single exam and say, brother, I'm panicking so much, I'm stressing out. And ironically, what happened is I actually failed my second year. And I had to retake my second year of medicine. And that was a difficult period. But honestly, this is the irony, that was the first year I didn't feel like an imposter. So it completely changed my attitude to medicine, because beforehand, I felt like I was kind of crawling through. And when I failed, I realized this is not sustainable. I realized I'm already going to be here for 5 years. I'm about to add another year to this. So I need to completely change my mindset and find a way of getting through this, of making this experience enjoyable. So that was sort of like a very pivotal turning point for me.
Did you do an autopsy, if you like, on yourself to find out, did you do self-evaluation to find out what it was that was your downfall? So obviously you mentioned that the style of learning, I'm getting a gist or getting the hint from what you've just mentioned, that maybe your learning wasn't the best it could have been, like in terms of how you were sort of revising and you were going through content? Would you say that was your downfall?
And also, how was that the year where you didn't feel like an imposter? I'd love to know a bit more about that.
Yeah.
As well, yeah.
Okay, so ironically, I would say it wasn't actually the learning styles. Even though my learning styles weren't that refined, when I was implementing them, they were getting me through.
Okay.
In terms of how they could have been improved, there were multiple ways. I think it was distractions. I think that there's certain distractions in life where you have an alarm bell. I'll give an example. Let's say me and you us three go out for a meal and we chill for an hour. Naturally, towards the end, it's like you get a bit dozy, you want to go home now. Okay. But sometimes there's some activities in life, some habits, some context where that alarm bell kind of gets switched off. If you think about people when they go on their phones, they go on Instagram or social media and you can scroll and scroll and scroll.
Keep
3
going.
hours have passed. You keep going. So just like that, there's certain habits. And I felt like at that time, I had certain routines. There were certain people in my life that I was spending time with where alarm bells weren't going off in terms of how much time I was spending. And that's the most dangerous state, because naturally you get to like an exam or a deadline and you have a wake up call. And the most dangerous thing is when you're living a life where you've lost your insight or you have insight, but you feel helpless. So I would say for me personally, it was very easy for me to become distracted. And when I retook, it forced me to change my mindset. I was the kind of guy that I would say yes to every single thing in terms of opportunities. And in first year, that's a really good mentality to have, to say yes to everything, get to know, but you need to know when it's time to say no.
Okay.
And I'd say, that's one of the most powerful lessons I took. In terms of why I felt like I wasn't an imposter during that year, I just had this epiphany, which is that how you feel has no bearing on how you perform. And I remember this from secondary school.
Performance, yeah.
You go into, you come out of your GCSE exams. I remember one of my friends, he came out and he said, that was so easy. Another girl came crying, believing she had failed. She got an A and he got like a C, okay. Which isn't necessarily too bad.
Interesting.
But it's just interesting how the confidence doesn't correlate. So really and truly, it's a simple equation. Work in, results out. How you feel, whether you feel like going to the gym or not, no impact. It's whether you went or not. So when you remove that emotional component, that's one aspect. It's not about whether I deserve to be here or not. That's a very emotional way of thinking. I'm here now. All praise be to God. I'm here. Alhamdulillah.
You just got to deal with it.
You just got to deal with it and just understand. Look, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And it's just identifying, like I said, remove that emotional component. Do I deserve it? And just saying, look, let's look at systems. Why did I fail? Break it down. Okay, what am I going to do differently? And just not putting too much blame on yourself, but more on the systems that led you to failure, more on the routines, the context around your life. So when I started looking at a more rational perspective, that's when I sort of lost the imposter syndrome. And I said, you're here. Everyone got here through different routes or whatever. And now I have a chance to do it right.
That's profound, man. You know what? Imposter syndrome is something that everyone goes through. It's not specific to medicine. It's specific to anything, any field. And we've already spoken about it on the podcast. We had Ammar. We had Dr. Ammar that came on, and he also he gave his 2 pence on it. He gave his advice. But, it's actually good because obviously Rayyan's given different advice to Ammar. And it's whatever works for. So it's good that we're bringing on various people that are giving their own 2 pence on it, because it's not one size fits all the solution, right? It's whatever works for that individual. Definitely. The other profound thing you mentioned that I actually want to touch on, and it actually brings us nicely onto our next point, was the distraction point. So you feel that obviously your learning in terms of your learning and stuff in medical school was fine. The way you were getting through content and your application was normal. It's just that the distractions were too high, And I remember that when we first started medical school, there was a lecture that they gave us, and they made a triangle, and I'm sure you guys remember there was a triangle, and they said in the triangle, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was sleep, there was what was social life, and what was the last one? Grades, yeah. I think it was grades, yeah. So sleep, social life, and grades. And they said you can only have 2 of the 3. Yeah, you can't have all 3. You can't have a mad social life plus sleep plus grades. Obviously, this is like, some people argue, this is extreme where you can do all 3 and stuff. But medicine, honestly, like, it's all about experience. Yeah, we're experienced. We've been through it. I'll be honest, my experience is that one will take a hit for sure. Yeah, at maybe different times of the year, maybe close to exams, your social life will take a hit. Or if you're someone who's like proper sociable extrovert, then your sleep will take a hit. Something will take a hit, or your grades. Yeah. So this brings us to our next point, because obviously you mentioned distractions, and this is something that obviously you went through. And there's something specific in terms of distractions that you actually went through that we want to touch on, and it's something that maybe other people will also go through in medical school. Obviously, it's the distractions that when it comes to like, you know, marriage and stuff. Yeah. So you obviously at some point, and this is something you confined to Anam, right? There's something he came to Anam about, you spoke to him about. It's obviously you wanted to get married. So just talk us through, like, obviously your experience.
Just general, it's very interesting to dig into that mind and that mentality as well, because to be honest, it's something that many people do face. Can contribute to an element of loneliness as well, and it can be difficult at times, obviously. So with regards to like gaining the requirements, or like just getting themselves ready to be in a position where, okay, I can handle that responsibility. Just generally, like mentally, physically as well, it can be quite taxing on an individual. So you know, we'd love to know like kind of how it went, and obviously we did speak about these things, and obviously like given your current circumstances and everything, I'm just so proud of you, man, in just general, like everything that we see.
100%, yeah.
100%. So let's talk about it, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really big topic. You know, obviously, as in people, everyone has like that desire, that need for companionship, and obviously people go about fulfilling that in different ways. And you mentioned, obviously, as Muslims, when it comes to companionship in a sort of romantic sense, there's certain boundaries that we have, and generally, it's only within the bounds of marriage, right? So for some people, if they hear me talking about this, they'll think, wow, this guy is really, you know, desperate for this. But from a Muslim perspective, it's like the only way you should really go about fulfilling that need for companionship is through marriage. So when we're talking about marriage, we're talking about, you know, that desire to find someone that is suitable. And obviously it's a big decision. You can't really have a girlfriend or boyfriend and sort of trial sort of like the relationship or whatever.
It was to responsibility, like you have someone you need to, you take care of each other, you have to support, you have certain responsibilities towards them, things like that. You know, so it's more like it's something very important. It's like an important duty contract.
Definitely. So my attitude towards getting married kind of evolved throughout medical school. I've, you know, from the very beginning, I was sort of open to the idea of getting married. And I think that medical school really humbled me, or not medical school itself, but the experiences I went through in medical school, in terms of, I had this idea that I myself was someone, like most of us do, that we are good people. So you say like, I'm a righteous person, I'm a good person, I'm trying to do my best. And part of me sort of felt, because of that, I should get concessions. A part of me felt like, oh, you know, a sister should see that in me, and her family should see that in me, and understand I'm in medical school. Because before medical school, I had this mindset that if I get into medical school, suddenly I'm like gold standard in terms of value.
High value man.
High value man, exactly. But to be honest, it doesn't work like that. And this is, I guess, a message to anyone who's in the situation where they want to get married as well. Specifically to the brothers, I'd say don't feel like you're entitled to anything. Don't feel like you're entitled to concessions. Don't feel that, oh, I'm righteous. And first of all, if you think of yourself as righteous, that's already a problem in and of itself. Because who are you to sort of call yourself, you know? You should always be sort of a bit critical of yourself in that regard, in a constructive way. But in addition to that, if you're honest with yourself, when it comes to marriage, marriage is not a charity. Marriage is not about concessions. And you need to be honest with yourself. You might be there and asking or expecting concessions. What I mean by concessions is, Inam mentioned that marriage is responsibility. And this is something I really did not understand at that time. Marriage, when a woman, and this applies to everyone generally, when a woman is asking that her man earns a certain level of wealth and people call her gold digger, I don't think they know what they're talking about. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with a woman looking out for her financial security and stability and that of her offspring. What's wrong with that? So obviously, as a man, you have certain responsibilities as a husband in Islam, and you need to be willing, you need to be able to fulfill that. And a woman is completely entitled to reject you on the basis of you not being able to do that. So that's why I say don't feel entitled to marriage, because at the end of the day, marriage is not charity. Women have the right, and you know, just not just women, everyone has the right to demand what they want in marriage. And you need to be honest with yourself. Again, this is a message to the brothers in a similar situation. If you found a sister that was righteous, intelligent, she's, you know, high in every marker, but she just wasn't your type in terms of her beauty, would you give a concession and say, but they're good in all these other areas? For most brothers, the answer is no. So who are you to now come along and expect a sister to say, this brother's righteous and so good, or her family, but he's not earning any money now?
So from what I'm understanding, Rayyan, you're saying that you realized throughout medical school, obviously you wanted to get married and whatnot, but then you realized that finances played a major role, a huge role in like sort of your marriage talks, or like, you know, your discussions with whoever you're when you were seeking out a partner. So would you say, so then what happened after that? So how did that impact your decision? What happened exactly?
I mean, obviously during medical school, I got to know a few prospects, you know, as you do. It didn't really work out. And you learn a lot from these experiences. My advice is obviously to everyone to go through the right procedure. Don't try and take shortcuts. In terms of what happened next when it didn't work out, I had these epiphanies or these realizations about sort of the fact that it's not them, it's me.
Performance,
I'm not ready. You know, because before it was sort of a victim mentality. Like, oh, look, what can I do? And it's like, you know what? The power is in your hands. Finances have a major role because like we've mentioned, obviously for different people, it'll be different things. I feel like I ticked a lot of boxes in a lot of ways, but finance is one that I didn't tick. And you do have the power to have an impact of that. Like I said, with great power comes great responsibility. Marriage, you get to obviously enjoy romantic companionship and having that person by your side, but in return, you have responsibilities to them. So can you fulfill those responsibilities? That's the question.
This is very important, obviously, for the viewers to know. When Rayyan's discussing this, he's discussing this from the experience and the context of him trying to follow his religion, And obviously in Islam, as we've alluded to already, it's like there's responsibilities that you have to come with when you want to seek a spouse or a partner, is that you have to obviously provide, as a man, you have to provide shelter, accommodation, you have to lodge them appropriately, and food, etc., etc. There's various responsibilities. A lot of them obviously come under the financial burden, comes under the individual, the man, and the male, and thus, which is why this is the context Rayyan's speaking about. So for him, that factor, he wasn't ready in terms of his finances wasn't up to date, and he didn't sort of work on them. So that's what he's doing.
Just to expand on that, like even if they're both working and things like that, based on the rent or things like that, the responsibility and the shelter and these necessities, the responsibility for that would be on you. So she gets to keep everything that she earns in that respect. But it's just very interesting to see how that shift occurred, and that was just crazy, like pure performance we've seen from the next few years. And that's why we're just, very happy to see the current situation of what's currently occurring. And I think it's worth just touching upon that, like some of the things which we've been engaging in together and just discussing, and just to see how that mentality shifted from victim mindset to, okay, I'm going to go out and perform. It's like, let's just look at his business mindset when it comes to linking your requirement for humanitarian work with regards to World Mobile and things like that, which is something you were quite passionate about. It was a particular project based on cryptocurrency, becoming an expert in cryptocurrency in this particular field, such that you're able to debate influential figures within the space. And furthermore, like working on tutoring, taking on your own clients, taking that responsibility and just leveling up significantly. Not just that, but when it comes to being a father or a good father, you need to be able to impart wisdoms on you. Because again, the context that we're speaking in is the fact that marriage, also, you have to look at, like, do you want to start a family with this particular individual, right? There's a lot more. There's a lot more than simple romantic kind of conventional considerations. So you need to look at what are the kids, like, are we going to be able to raise a good family together, right? So you need to be able to be in a position where you have the skill sets to impart the appropriate wisdoms for your children, which you want them to grow up with. A lot of the times that has carryover into spirituality and religious understanding, because obviously that is the framework and the paradigm in which you see the world, etc. So even in that respect, your performance, we saw how things really changed. We saw how things changed, obviously, in the physical realm, with regards to the training aspect of things and like all these different things. So the point is that real shift actually had practical, tangible outcome. And we see Rayyan in the current shape and form that he is, sitting in front of us today on this podcast. And obviously there's a reason why we called you, there's many out there, but that's essentially what we're trying to get at. So that's just amazing.
We actually wanted to touch on, Inam alluded to some of your financial endeavors, one being crypto. So obviously now I think a lot of people are well acquainted with crypto. I think you were going in at a time where still a lot of people weren't really too sure about it. Yeah, not really. A lot of people didn't really know about it. So talk us through your journey. Like obviously you've had this experience. You wanted to get married in medical school. You've got medical school to focus on. You've had to have a setback of a year. All these things are going on. And now obviously you've come to the realization that you needed to get your money game up, essentially.
Yeah.
So what made you, just talk us through your journey. Where did you explore other areas before crypto? How did
to build upon that?
Yeah.
The basic element to understand is that the fact that a doctor, a medic, is much more than someone who buries his face in the textbook. Yeah. Because it's very good for a doctor to be able to understand how the world works, all these economic, financial systems, or he's able to communicate on a wide variety of topics. Not only does that make him a better doctor in order to relate to and communicate with patients, that makes him a better individual. And it's something that, doctors are, like some people have the viewpoint that doctors, they only understand science and things like that. And that in reality, it may be actually something that we see, but it's always like a breath of fresh air when we see in regards to well-rounded doctors who are able to perform in multiple different avenues.
No, it's also important. For example, the junior doctor strikes that are coming up, you need to have you can't just be striking for no reason. You need to know how you're within. Fair, it's all good and well saying that, I'm a medic and whatnot. I don't need to. You still need to know about it because you're working in a system. So it's going to affect you. Like the funding to the system, what type of healthcare system at NHS is compared to, like, for example, other healthcare systems in the US and the Scandinavian countries. So this is all like very important knowledge that one needs to have. And I feel like there's no better time to learn it than in medical school itself, because you have ample time to learn it. Obviously, it's not to say you can't learn it in other times. But let's obviously just for the sake of time, let's just go on to your financial sort of endeavors and what you've started and the projects you've been working on. Tell us first of all how you went into crypto. Did you explore any other areas before that, or was it something you naturally fell into?
Okay, just to preface it, I think one thing that's good when we're going to talk about finances is something that's really changed my mindset, which was one of our mentors mentioned, think about if you had because a lot of people, they're running for money, they don't know why. So he asked, if you had all that money, what would you do? Like, what would your life look like? And then when you lay out what your life would look like, ask yourself genuinely, do you actually need money for all of those goals? And I think that's just a good way to preface this discussion, because a lot of people, they're waiting to get rich until they start working towards their ideal version of themselves. And if you were to look at it realistically, most things you need in life are not dependent on money. And they're not even, for most people, for most of their actual goals, if they were to look introspectively, they, actually do have the time to work towards it. So that's the first thing I'd say. First of all, try and understand what exactly you want the money for. Why exactly it's important to you. And for me, as we've discussed, the financial component was kind of linked to most of my personal goals. I don't think I need money for them. When it comes to physical training, when it comes to learning certain areas of knowledge, I think that's just time investment. But I think I realized that money is really essential when it comes to family, when it comes to when you're going to get married, raising your children, helping others out. That's where money, comes into the fold for me. So crypto, obviously, I don't want to shill it too much. Yeah, you brothers know. Mentioned the word shilling. Just sort of, you're kind of selling it like, I want, pitching it. There's obviously a lot of people who are already like that. I want to give sort of a realistic take where I got into crypto in a previous bull run, not the one that happened recently, maybe in about 2017. And to be honest, ironically, I remember all the way back in secondary school, my younger brother had been telling me, Rayyan, there's this thing called Bitcoin. This is when it was £2. And we tried to buy it back then, but it was so difficult to actually get into it. So we gave up, and then you're like, I missed out. And then it goes up, and you're like, So in 2017, I think roughly there was a bull run. which is where the value of Bitcoin went crazy high. And I bought some because I was thinking, this might help me out. Like, these are investments. Make yourself feel like an asset. And then obviously it collapsed.
Okay.
Thankfully, I didn't have enough money at the time anyway to put in a lot. And that's one thing I'd say about investments. I'd say investments and passive income is really amazing. But I'd say think of it, again, this is all theory. I'm not rich yet. My financial situation is quite mediocre at the moment. But this is all theory. So see this as advice from my older brother, not sort of an expert in the field. But I would say the way I see investments now is more like a multiplier, where you need to have a certain base or a certain main source of income before you think about branching out. That said, there's nothing wrong with being a bit experimental when it comes to investments at a younger age, because time is on your side when you're younger. You can actually take bigger risks. You can put £10 in a random crypto, and maybe if time is on your side in 10 years, it might be worth who knows how much. I got into crypto because I genuinely believe that the current banking system is very, very disturbing, to say the least. I'm not an expert on it, but when you research sort of fractional reserve banking and all of this, I believe one of your previous guests, Sheikh Muawiyah, mentioned it before. He probably spoke about this in depth. I think I watched that episode. So you guys viewers can go watch that for more information on that specifically. But the banking system and the financial system is totally messed up. And I personally I feel I have a complex relationship with money myself, because my parents come from Lebanon, and growing up there was sort of a civil war where the value of money sort of plummeted, and that always stuck with me, this idea that like my grandparents worked their whole lives and they were doing quite well for themselves, and just like that,
life savings gone.
Life savings gone. So in my head I've always had that sort of a bit of a strange relationship with money, where I don't value it too highly, if that makes sense. I always feel like it's quite temperamental. Obviously, there might be certain issues that stem from that, so I'm not saying that's the right mindset to have. But then with crypto, I'm not going to sit here and say, there's one crypto to rule them all and all of this. But what I would say is that it provides a new opportunity for a new financial system.
100%.
The potential is very interesting. And that's kind of what got me hooked into the idea that the current system we have is just completely fugazi. So there's nothing wrong with being an early adopter of something that has the potential to completely change everything. So that's what got me into Bitcoin. And as I got into Bitcoin, trying to use Bitcoin kind of put me off Bitcoin, because I remember when everyone was selling, when the bull run had ended, 2017, and I couldn't sell mine. And I just thought, what kind of financial, I was like, if this is like, it's not even being adopted widely, imagine if it gets adopted widely, it kind of put me off. So I was kind of on the search for, okay, Bitcoin might have, made a path or trailblaze. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the
way out.
The be all end all. And if you think about it, the analogy I think of in my head is the .com bubble, where the internet, if I told you, like maybe in 1990s, there's this thing called the internet, it's going to change everything. So you go out and you buy like pets.com, which is like this website that was like increasing in popularity, whatever. And then it completely collapsed. So I was right to say that the internet is going to change everything. It's going to be the future. But it doesn't necessarily mean that what exists now is going to be what survives. Because after the .com bubble, burst, that's when you got Google, that's when you got Facebook, that's when you got Twitter, and a lot of other companies, they died. So I sort of have the same logic when it comes to crypto, which is you don't necessarily know, even though I do believe crypto has a lot of potential, you don't necessarily know which one is going to be the survivor. The current one that I've hedged my bets on is called Cardano, but I don't want to go too much into shilling it, because I myself, I'm kind of cautiously optimistic about it. From my research, it seems like a really good option. But again, I don't want to talk about it too much in that regard. One of the projects, and this is maybe one wisdom I'll leave it with. You mentioned World Mobile. World Mobile is a project. They kind of want to connect the unconnected, so to speak. A lot of the world is not connected to the internet, to infrastructure, stuff like that. So the reason I was quite drawn to it is I ask people two questions when they're going to invest in crypto. The first question is, does the crypto have a use case? This is the first question I'd say everyone should ask. Does it have a use case? A real world use case, okay? Because a lot of it is sort of, like, for example, there's like games and stuff. And the second question is there a reason why it's on blockchain? So is there a reason why specifically it works better being on blockchain than not being on blockchain? Why is it a crypto thing? You know, you have all these NFTs and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that, you know, people can't make money of them, off of them. But the question I ask myself is, okay, but why is it useful that that's on blockchain? And obviously people can completely disagree with me. Like I said, I'm open to being criticized on that. But me personally, I want to invest in projects where I think there's real world value and that I think that the blockchain makes sense. I think that Bitcoin makes sense because, like I said, the banking system, the idea of having a store of value is broken in today's day and age. So that makes sense to use blockchain, a decentralized system, for a store of value. And World Mobile, it made sense to have a decentralized blockchain-like network when you sort of look deeper into why exactly they're doing it. Because it kind of provides unique incentives for people in those areas and people here as well to invest in that infrastructure. It actually has a benefit of it being decentralized. So that's the kind of wisdom I'd say in terms of the financial side of things. When you're looking at crypto, come into it cautiously optimistic. See it more as like a multiplier rather than the be all end all that you're banking on it. It's your lottery ticket to get out of poverty. That's what I felt like at the beginning.
So you mentioned World Mobile, Rayyan. Just tell the viewers, for the viewers that don't know, what is it? What's the ethos behind it, sort of thing? What's the aims of this? Because every coin, as you said, there's some coins that have no real value whatsoever. They're just there, and obviously there's a term for it. But what's the value? What value does World Mobile bring?
Okay, so the basic premise from my current understanding of World Mobile is that in the world, there's billions of people that aren't connected to the internet. A lot of areas of sub-Saharan Africa, for example, they're not connected. And this is obviously an unreached market base. And the issue is there's no incentive for large telecoms providers to actually connect them because it's not that profitable. So the appeal of World Mobile is basically to create a decentralized network where you provide incentives for people to connect these places up, where the people in these communities can actually profit from placing the infrastructure in their communities, and people like in these countries can also profit from supporting that development. And you know, through this decentralized network, it completely changes the incentive model. Like I said, large traditional telecoms companies, they might not necessarily have an incentive to work in these areas. But by changing the incentive model through this decentralized system, you connect, or you create a new incentive an incentive and a means to connect up, you know, these people who are living in areas without access to the internet to the internet. That's sort of like the basic premise.
Interesting.
Not only that, but obviously you had the tutoring endeavor which you're doing, and like all these different avenues just opened up, and like one step to the next step, and like strength to strength basically. So that's exactly, like, we just wanted to give some motivation, encouragement for the viewers. You know, anyone who's in a similar situation to Rayyan as well. There's a lot to learn, to be honest. I'm very grateful for you coming on and sharing all of your benefits and wisdoms with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rayyan. It was obviously great. Obviously, this is Rayyan. We go way back. There's someone that we mentored, and then now he's mentoring other people in StriveMed. So it was nice to see. You know, it's like a real life case study of StriveMed, the fruits of StriveMed itself. So thank you very much for coming on and giving us your time. And hopefully we can get Rayyan on a second episode where we'll discuss more about the mentorship program and how he benefited from it in depth.
Exactly, 100%. Find us on www.strivemed.co.uk, Instagram StriveMed, and TikTok StriveMed. And make sure to subscribe. Until next time, all the best.